It's really, really pleasing to be here today and to follow on from this morning's speakers, although I do have to admit I've rewritten my speech twice thanks to the quality of the presentations. Product stewardship, that's what I'm here to speak about today. What I hope to do is give you a bit of an understanding as to who we as a company, 3R, are, and ultimately how product stewardship forms a cornerstone to the wider circular economy. So, my role with 3R is business development. I work across a number of agencies, and one of my roles is also the product stewardship scheme manager for the Glass Packaging Forum, which is something I'll cover later on today. My relationship with Gisborne District Council is I had the pleasure of working with them 18 months ago to write their waste management and minimisation plan, which is a guiding document for the next 7 years on how waste, recycling and resource recovery will be put in place. So 3R, what we do as a group, there's 6 key functions that we operate across. We range across from waste audits through to education, behaviour change. And we're a family of 28 staff across 3 centres, Christchurch, Auckland, and most of us are based in Hastings due to the directors being based there and the idea being local business. When you look at resource recovery, particularly with regards to research and development, it's got to add value and it's got to allow resources to re-enter the actual production cycle, and that's critical to the circular economy and why we're here, talking about how we can do more with less, essentially. We're also quite active in the behaviour change aspect, and that's looking at how we enable groups, communities, societies to do things they've never thought about doing before by having the information and the power to do so. All the icons on the side are either product stewardship schemes that are in existence across Aotearoa or are in the design, development and consultation phases. So I'll go through some of these later on, but Paintwise is resin funded, Deluxe the same, ChemCollect obviously collecting chemicals from residential properties, DDT Muster taking obsolete chemicals from the rural sector. You've got Rebound, which is focusing on mattresses. And when you look at there's close to 200,000 mattresses going to landfill in this country every year, it's quite a big problem if you stack it up. You also have SeatSmart, which again, a large item that most households with children will encounter that have a limited life expectancy. So what happens to those products and how do you pull them out? Bigger ticket items, we're currently working with the refrigeration group. So this is getting all the competitors within one area of interest together to work towards a solution, and the same with the lubricant stewardship for lubricant packaging. And when you're looking at there's nearly 8 million containers a year requiring disposal or recovery, it puts it into perspective. You've got to walk the talk. So we're not just here saying, look how good we are. We do all these things, which I won't go into too much detail. But again, it's making it relevant to the locality. So one of the things that we do is every tonne of chemicals we collect through our schemes, we give a $200 donation to the Million Metre Streams to recover and improve the quality of the other rivers and wetlands around New Zealand. What we believe, as it's been discussed this morning, GDP, it's not a favoured term here today. We believe that linear economy is unsustainable. We believe that communication is key, that the circular economy must maximise and optimise the materials that are within that system. And we believe that businesses, consumers and government need to work together to achieve better environmental, economic and social benefits. And we're seeing that more and more with the lubricant packaging conversation I had earlier. We're seeing every player within the lubricant industry around the table working with us to a proper outcome. So that's really encouraging. Ideas that would not have been possible 10 years ago. And ultimately, product stewardship is the cornerstone to the circular economy. And when I say product stewardship, it's where the producer is responsible or has greater responsibility for the product they're putting onto the market, enabling schemes to recover the value of those products and put it back into something of value. So we'll go into that in more detail. The linear, it's flawed, we know that. And I'm going to talk to you about linear failure. We've covered this thanks to our esteemed colleagues this morning. The idea of growth is key. It doesn't work. If you picture just a small growth of 3% every year, year on year on year, within 24 years you've doubled the amount of materials you're taking from a planet with finite resources. So we've got to work smarter. We've got to do things differently. So linear failure, let's talk about plastic. Obviously a topic that's very close to many people's hearts. It's been a media frenzy this past year as plastic's been demonized. You know, plastics have been designed to be a fantastic wonder product that has amazing capabilities for preserving, for lightweighting, for creating efficiencies. But the very properties that it's been designed and brought into the economy for are the issues that we're now facing from an environmental perspective. So linear failure is we've been reliant on exporting our plastics overseas for the past 20 years. Ever since we put curbside recycling from the late 80s, early 90s, we've been looking for how do we get rid of this material without actually investing in this area. We know that with China closing its doors, we're seeing a number of councils now not taking all-grade plastics because they just can't find markets for them. So why would you collect something if you can't find a home for that material? And that starts pushing things back up the value chain. Why is it being produced in the first place? So if you picture the supermarket of today, it's a very much different operation to what it was 20 years ago. When I was at university 20 years ago, we didn't have water bottles off the shelves, so we had to get a purpose drinks bottle. Now you can just go and buy one and throw it away quite quickly after you've drunk it. The aisles at supermarkets, you've got aisles dedicated to sports drinks, to water bottles. So the consumption is rampant. And it's really, really putting a bit of pressure on how we actually use the resource. And when you take into account 1 million plastic bottles are purchased every minute, every hour, 24 hours a day around the world, it puts it, again, into an area of concern. Also, the way we do things, the way that our plastics are collected largely around New Zealand is en masse to make it as affordable as possible to the ratepayer by the council that's providing that service through their contractors. So, therefore, you're not sorting it into grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, and you're not maximising the actual value of those particular materials. It could be done better. You can have mechanical sorters, optical sorters. You can get quite good sorting processes in place, but it costs. And when you look at most of the actual plastics that are being stockpiled around the country at the moment are mixed grade. There's no value to anybody overseas to have them. And what you're seeing is China has improved its environmental performance to such a degree that they're saying we don't want your away that was mentioned earlier on today. We don't want to be your dumping ground. So can we bag China for improving their environmental performance? Absolutely not. But what you've seen happen is as China closes its doors, Malaysia opens its, be it through improper means. And once that starts getting stopped, it goes to Thailand, it goes to Vietnam, it's now going through Turkey into the black market. So plastics is a major issue. We have got so many plastics, and that's not even talking about what's in the marine environment right now. Simple solution is use less stuff. Have a metal drinks bottle, drink from a tap, drink from a cup. And again, this is reflected by the Colmar-Brunton poll that came out earlier this year. And when you look at the biggest issue of concern for 72% of New Zealanders that was surveyed as part of this poll is the build-up of plastics in the environment. And this is where media can convey a message so quickly, so rapidly, that the actual pace of change is, the pace of change that is required is not possible with the technology and systems we have in place. Circular economy, we talked about this earlier through my esteemed colleagues, but I want to just make out the key point on the left-hand side that waste, as we know it, is a man-made concept. Waste does not occur in the natural environment. Everything that is grown goes back to actually replenish the ecosystem as such. So the circular economy has got huge potential. We're basically looking at nature to learn from nature to put things into a circular model. So it's not without, it's not lost on me that I'm presenting the ideals of a product stewardship scheme design in a linear diagram. So just bear with me. The idea is just to show you the actual steps that are put in place to design a product stewardship scheme. What happens is at the end of this process, that's when the circularity kicks in. So product stewardship is pretty much where you're looking at increasing producer, brand owner commitment to program development, product design, product inputs, the repair, the reuse, the products as a service, and how that is paid for. So traditionally, this is a conversation. This is a meeting of minds. This is a meeting of identifying what outcome you want to achieve. So let's talk about glass. Glass, we want more glass to be recycled. So you then look at who are the key stakeholders. Once you get buy-in from those stakeholders, you then look at what is the scale of the problem. We want to improve our glass recycling rates. Okay, then how are we going to make that happen, and how is that going to be paid for? So is that an advanced disposal fee? Is that container deposit schemes? Is that rates funded? Who are the players? How is it going to be funded? You then trial your collection methodology to see if it's going to be able to be replicated in a bigger area, or if it's going to be able to be replicated nationwide. You then put the program in place, and it takes off. That's the theory, just using glass as a potential example, which I'll come back to later on. But it's really critical that product stewardship, within the design of your scheme, that it doesn't take the lowest cost option. We know lowest cost does not mean best value for the environment. So the principles of product stewardship pretty much is putting a huge amount of responsibility back on the producer of the product. Right now, if you're looking at plastic bottles, and if you're looking at the type of packaging council is picking up from curbside, the burden of responsibility is firmly on council and therefore on the ratepayer. So by having product stewardship for that product, you take that burden and you distribute it back on the manufacturer, which is a far fairer model. Product stewardship within this country currently is all voluntary at this stage. There's about 13 to 14 schemes, if I'm right, operating across New Zealand, and these cover concrete, they cover chemicals, refrigerants, quite a diverse range. They cover carpet tiles in some instances. So some really good schemes working, but they're all voluntary. How you change this playing field would be by government intervention. And that is where you have, under the Waste Minimisation Act, which is the only piece of legislation to tackle our waste issues within New Zealand, you have the ability for the Minister for the Environment to declare a material a priority product. That would then necessitate a mandatory product stewardship scheme for that product. So if the Minister came out today and said, plastic bottles are a priority product, there'd have to be within 2 years an operational scheme by industry for those materials. The benefits of producer responsibility and producer and product stewardship are that the producers are then required to design, manage, and look at the end of life of those products. You also then have greater material returns at the end of the life. So you are capturing more material, you are able to repurpose that material back into the system. It's not being lost to landfill. And to actually look at the accreditation for product stewardship, right now under a voluntary approach, it must achieve positive results and address the issues for which the scheme has been designed. So you're not just putting something in place for the sake of it, you're looking at tangible, measurable benefits. It's got to be transparent, it's got to be accountable. My role as the Glass Packaging Forum Scheme Manager, we have a yearly report we supply to the Ministry for the Environment on glass outcomes. And I suppose what I want to do here is looking at beyond or behind product stewardship, there's a waste hierarchy principle, which is looking at how you can actually establish activities by order of preference by the importance of the waste hierarchy. And what I've tried to do is look at coffee to try and give you a bit of an understanding as to how simple this is. So you're looking at prevent, reuse, recycle, recover, dispose. Ultimately, dispose is the worst thing that you want to be doing. Prevent is the easiest that can be done. So if you're looking at everyday activities, we've become so reliant on convenience that we're having waste streams that you'd never have thought of 20 years ago. Coffee cups. 295 coffee cups went to landfill within New Zealand last year. That's huge. That's 120 billion in the US if you compare us to other countries. So what could you do to prevent? Well, you could actually take a couple of minutes. You could catch up with the newspaper. You could sit in a cafe. You could have a coffee. Why do you have to take the coffee cup and run out the building? What is the mad rush that we've put ourselves under? So it's prevention. You could look at reusing. Yeah, you could actually drink your coffee. You could enjoy it and leave it there to be washed and reused by somebody else through the cafe. You could recycle it so many times. This coffee cup can go through the dishwasher how many times? It's right there in front of you. And you can recover. You can sit down, take 5 minutes, enjoy your coffee, and not throw a cup that contains huge resources into the landfill. So I just want to talk to you about a few of the schemes that are dear to my heart. So Resine was the first product stewardship scheme that 3R have had the pleasure of running. It's been up and running for about 12 to 14 years. It runs by an advanced disposal fee being charged by the company at all their stores on per litre of paint. So you'll see highlighted there in orange on the receipt in the bottom that that's clearly identified. All stores clearly show that they're part of this scheme. What that allows you to do is when you've used your paint and you have no use for that paint, or if you're clearing out your shed and you find Resine paint, you can take it back to any Resine store free of charge. They then put it into some of these containers you see on the left-hand side, and we collect that on their behalf, and we take it up to one of 3 collection points where it's either reblended into a permitted colour for colour range for graffiti cover to be supplied back to councils, or it's actually put into some concrete applications through allied concrete. So putting paint into concrete has a number of benefits. We are also looking at a number of research and development options where you can extract various materials from the paint to be recovered back into the paint. So that's a working partnership with Resine. We report to Resine as the scheme manager. They tell us what focus they'd like to look at, and this is nationwide. Every Resine store in the country is serviced by our trucks collecting their paint and taking it back to be decanted or to be processed. All solvent paints go through New Zealand solvent recyclers. All water-based paints are then processed into a number of products. We've done a number of research development ideas looking at planter pots, looking at how much paint you can put into these types of garden feature ideas, but certainly Allied are a good partner to have on board, and that's a really good example of a paint company going beyond the call of duty of the old-fashioned linear model to look at how it can be brought round and their product can be either recovered or repurposed to something else. We talked about glass, and glass is the ultimate. Right here in New Zealand, all our glass bottles can quite easily go to the company OI in Auckland, where they can quite easily be turned back into glass. And when you look at our recycling rate for glass bottles, all glass going to market within New Zealand, we're recovering about 64% total. When you compare that to plastics, it's about 15%. So glass is actually doing quite well. There's still room for improvement. And there's a conversation in front of the select committee right now about the options of container deposit schemes and whether that would improve the outcome for glass. When you look at the math, if you're using virgin materials into the manufacture of glass, you have a higher carbon emission impact than using crushed glass from recycling schemes. So about 150,000 tonnes of glass bottles were recovered from around New Zealand and put through the furnace last year. That's a very positive story compared to 10 years ago. My role is working a little bit like United Nations. I work with 67 councils, I work with numerous contractors and all the agencies associated with glass to look at getting one common direction for glass back to beneficial reuse and recycling. It's not without challenges, and we quite often have comments about, well, why can't we just wash the bottles and reuse them? Because of the direction manufacturing has gone over the past 20 years. The model that you may have been able to wash your wine bottle 20 years ago quite easily in hot temperature water, put it back in, doesn't work anymore. They've been lightweighted. So when you're looking at the wine bottle today, it's probably 25% lighter than it was 20 years ago. So the wall is thinner. It's more prone to breaking under heat applications. So the days of the 1970s of taking a little pop bottle back to the store are gone at this current stage. But what we can do is look at how we recover more glass. Glass from Christchurch is currently being turned into roading mix due to the cost of getting it from Christchurch, but also due to the aggregate requirements of that city as it does its rebuild. So that's another alternative option for glass, so it doesn't need to go to landfill. We're also seeing with the plastic conversation going on right now, we're starting to see more and more people inquiring about glass for their product. So we're seeing more manufacturers and producers thinking outside the box, looking at what they can do more environmentally friendly. In Hastings, we have Origin Earth Milk. They come to our office every Wednesday at 1 o'clock, and we have 15 1-litre glass bottles that they refill then and there. So we've got rid of 15 litres of plastic milk bottles per week just by the existence of this company having a old-fashioned milk service. It's becoming so popular, they can't keep up with demand. We're seeing Aunt Jean's, which is a dairy brand through the supermarkets, now being supplied in glass bottles. So times are changing. So the more that the consumers are having a bugbear with plastics, the more that the manufacturers will look for other solutions, which puts more pressure on how you get that glass back to furnace. Not all product stewardships are accredited through the government process. Seat Smart is a program we've been running for a number of years to look at what potential could there be, and it's quite unique by the fact that it's not funded by the traditional approach of manufacturer being on board. So we work with the end of life of these products. Over the past few years, there's been 11,000 of these seats recovered. So if you stack up 11,000 seats, that's quite a significant number. That equates to 40 tonnes of plastic from these seats that have been recovered. And you'll see the breakdown of these materials as to why we've got to try these things. And if you don't have any enthusiasm, nothing ever changes. And the lady that's running this scheme on behalf of 3R is so passionate about this. And we're starting to see more and more inquiries as to, how do I do this properly? And all the plastic, 80% of that seat goes to Astron Plastics in Auckland, where it's remanufactured into new products, mainly the rebar plastic mounts for concrete sites, but also you're recovering 12% metal. Once upon a time, this would have just gone straight to landfill. So there's a number of things that you have to cover up when you're looking at product stewardship scheme. One is the funding mechanism. And these seats cost $25 a time to recycle. It's also who's going to do that work. And what we're seeing is as products evolve for safety's sake or durability's sake, it becomes harder to dismantle. So we have a number of arrangements with social enterprise groups around the country. Kilmarnock in Christchurch, South Waikato Community Trust, and these guys take the seats to pieces on our behalf. What we're finding is as these seats are becoming more and more technical, extendable parts and contractible parts, they're being, the design is becoming more complex. It's taking longer and longer to break these seats down. You're looking at what once upon a time had screws and bolts, now have rivets. So it becomes quite complex, and it's a conversation that you need to have with the manufacturer. But how do you do that when the manufacturer is not seeing the relevance right now? So no scheme is the same. So what's going to happen? Right now, you'll have seen that by 1st of July, plastic bags are banned. All plastic bags from retail under a certain micron will be banned from 1st of July, and that's really encouraging. That's just the government dipping their toe into the ocean of change. And it's really encouraging to see that the new round of funding under the Waste Minimisation Fund is requiring investment in these areas, which is to encourage product stewardship, resource recovery, and looking at the sustainable life cycle of plastics. All key areas we've talked about so far today. There's also likely to be priority declarations by the Minister for the first time. I'm just taking a bit of a punt here. I would say that within a year, there'll be between 3 to 6 priority products at least actively considered in the media for reaction. And they may include packaging, because it's such an emotive topic right now. So where would I see this going? I'd say that we're going to see a number of priority products which will require a number of product stewardship schemes to be rolled out over the very near future. And the landscape that we're currently used to seeing consumer products come to us will change. So I'm going to leave it there. It's an exciting time to be working in this field. Waste has never been so topical as it is right now. And I think the actual, not only what the previous speaker covered about the groundswell of consumer awareness and change, but also having a proactive government is going to see a lot of these come to reality. So thank you very much.